Hello, YouTube fam. How y'all doing? It's your Uncle Tim. This is Uncle Tim Rants and Reviews, a channel where I rant and I review. How you doing, 2.0 fam? I guess I'm not empathetic enough. I'm sitting here listening to Cassie testify against Diddy, and I'm just sitting here thinking to myself, you must think I'm fucking stupid. You sat there with this man for 10 years off and on, initiating a lot of the freak-offs, talking about, well, if I didn't participate, he might do it with somebody else, and I don't want him to do it with anybody else. People are saying, oh, that sounds like she was groomed. That's a grown-ass woman. You can't groom no grown-ass woman. Either you complicit or not. I think she was Bonnie and he was Clyde. And I honestly believe she probably was going broke. And this is where all this shit jumped in my honest opinion. Where she sued him and all that stuff. Look, you get a taste of the limelight and, all of a sudden, he stopped fucking with other people. He didn't get you pregnant. He got Young Miami and some other chick pregnant. And I'm sitting here looking at it like, what about you? You was with Ryan Leslie before you got with him. Ryan Leslie helped you get to Bad Boy. Then all of a sudden, you met Diddy. You dropped him like a hot-ass potato because you seen dollar signs, fame, and a better life. Was this life better? People say, oh, well, he abused her. You could have left at any damn time. He wasn't holding her hostage. That woman, when that elevator shit happened on that tape, that woman didn't have to go down the elevator. She could have just went down the damn stairs. What really going on, man? See, my whole thing is, man, there's a lot of shit that you don't see. As long as Sean happy, as long as this, man, get the fuck out of here. Since when in life is the younger years of your life not held accountable? You gotta be held accountable for every damn thing, and you do. And I'm not disrespectful, and I'm not against women's rights and anything like that, or, people who have been sexually abused. I don't believe she's been sexually abused. You were complicit. You called the women. You initiated a lot of this shit, but now all of a sudden, oh, I was the antagonist at first. Now I want to play victim because this shit about to jump off. Why did she testify? She didn't even have to testify. She had already got paid out. Why she testified? Her name is one of the most searched names out there right now. Do you understand that? I want to understand, how did the guy even get her pregnant at this particular point after finding out she FaceTimed him while Diddy was busting her down? Dude, what is going on? How is it that, people are making so many excuses for Cassie? She was young. You were a grown-ass woman. Since when being grown has any excuses with it? Dude, I see if she was underage. The first time Diddy kissed me was when I turned 21. Man, get the hell out of here. We know his track record with underage women, allegedly, and you were underage, and you was under his thumb, and I'm pretty sure this man did what he did with no hesitation, and she was there for it. Now think about it. Cassie was a beautiful young lady and still is. Back in the day, Cassie was a model, but Cassie wasn't a singer. Cassie had auto-tune. When she performed in person, she had no presence, and she couldn't really sing. And that was evident when she was on 106 in Park. Bro, you got to look at a lot of this stuff, man. You got to pay attention. I hate when people do this, and they make it seem like, they were victimized. Now, all of a sudden, you winning. All of a sudden, most likely, she going to write a book, and she's going to do a tell-all, and all this other stuff. Why? Because you see the dollar signs. There's money to be involved. But I always say actions have reactions, and there are consequences for some of this stuff you do. Because, like I said, you didn't hear the whole truth here. There are so many pieces that is missing to this puzzle that I find it odd that people were just going along with it. I'm like, wait, don't people want to ask real questions like, okay, why was you with this man for so long? Like I said, Young Miami and the other young lady, they done had kids by him. I think he got 7 kids. During the testimony, his 2 daughters got up and walked out. I guess it was just too graphic. And my whole thing was, Where were you to Diddy? You wasn't his girlfriend. You was just somebody he was busting down. Then, you hear this man talk about how he was basically asking people if they want to have sex with her. And they were like, isn't it her decision, not yours? Shouldn't she be talking about this and not you? Oh man, this. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking to myself, I said, this is all about power. And she was like, anything for Sean. And, I loved him and this and that. You know what? I believe you loved his lifestyle. I believed you loved his money, his presence. I believed you loved going to events with him and just being on his arm and having everybody look at you. My thing is, think about it. You was with this man for 10 years. What did you have to show for it? Where were your parents? We holding Diddy responsible. I want to know one thing. What was Usher mama when, he had basically guardianship? What was Justin Bieber's mama when Usher gave Diddy guardianship for a minute? What was that about? Dude, don't you see the pattern here? My biggest thing that I would have looked at is, man, look at all of his artists. None of them doing good. Anybody that was signed with him, they weren't doing good at all. If you waiting on residuals or any damn thing, you would never get them. And my thing is, what's with all the baby oil? I thought inside of that, I thought it was drugs or something. But, all these bottles of baby, what the fuck? What do you need that much of baby oil for? You just oiling each other up? And I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, what type of dumbass would get himself in these positions not realizing, bro, if you want ass, you can just call a chick to give you ass. Excuse the language. Excuse all the cussing and everything like that. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. The thing that I'm just trying to understand is why. What are we doing here? Seriously, what are we doing and why? Why are people doing so much to say that this woman is a victim? When in actuality, if a man did the same thing she did, they'd be hollering foul. But I guess if you time it just right, you become a victim. This is why it's so hard for the men on the jury to understand, why are you immune? Because you played a big part in this. You helped facilitate a lot of this shit yourself. But yes, I'm talking a lot of nonsense that people don't want to hear. It's common sense. Dude, you can't get out there and do bad shit and think you're going to be rewarded. And this is what's happening. She is being rewarded. And people talking about she's brave. How are you brave? Really, how are you brave? Brave is somebody who suffered through something and did something. It's just like, wow. There are people suffering. There are people who sing stuff. People who are talking. People who set to testify. And, a lot of things that Cassie was saying, if you listen to the internet and you listen, to some of these sites, you'll find out some of the shit she's saying is contradictory. Her part in everything, man. And, and I'm just looking, well, she did claim she was a part of stuff. And she did claim she called people and this and that. And my thing is, I'm like, man, was anybody wearing condoms, man? And this is like risky behavior with what's going on right about now in the society. There are big uprisings and STIs and, man, people doing this crazy ass stuff. Why? You want to have sex with women so bad and, you want to, please a man so bad that you got lost with this man. The lifestyle, the access, But I truly believe this young lady was going broke. And, that $20 million, that changed everything. Then, her testifying changed a whole lot of stuff in her favor. Her man sitting there through all of this testimony about the 13 guys, and they finished on her and rubbing, she going in the room with Diddy and he rubbing the stuff on his nipples, talking about he the king and stuff like that. And I'm like, what the hell? Like, what is really going on? What am I witnessing? What are we seeing? But like I say to you all, that's the thing that we are not paying attention to. It wasn't meant to make sense. Rich people doing rich shit. And you get noticed at the end. There was a lot of unconsensual sex. There were a lot of drugs and alcohol, allegedly roofies and all type of stuff happening, and it's just weird. And, just knowing that this man has been around everybody doing some of the wildest stuff, and people are just busting it down like for a real one with him, man. And I'm just like, wait, hold on. What are we doing? When did society get so ratchet that people just don't give a damn about their safety or, their health? This man, and just imagine the body count. A lot of y'all ain't paying attention. With her, a lot of the Freakoff stuff was damn near, multiples. So it's making me think, like, wow, he's setting out just like that. Didn't you kiss after all of this? Then there are alleged tapes of all of this. Bro. Then her guy, who she's married to now, is hugging her and saying she's brave. How? She shared her abuser, but wasn't he paying your salary at one point in time? I'm so confused with how this is working and how everybody is not paying attention. She went through some stuff. She did. But she also was complicit. How are you overlooking that? Like I said, if that was a guy, he'd be in jail right now. But by being a woman and she's pregnant, it's a whole nother thing. Even though when people testify, you granted immunity sometimes. I don't know if that was ever said or that was ever mentioned. I don't know. And this is all alleged. I'm just looking at women making excuses for her. I think a lot of the guys see it for what it is, man. That's effed up. They were saying this a long time ago, where it's, people would do anything for fame and fortune. And they don't realize the price tag to go along with it. This price tag is very high. And, what's being asked is just too much. Sometimes you got to back your ass up. And if it wasn't working the way you wanted it to, you should have left. But like I said, the lifestyle, the access, the jewelry, the clothes, flying all over the place, being on a rich man's arm. He had her to shave the side of her head, because he seen another woman with it and said, man, I like that. Cassie shaved the side of your head. And, the guy asked her, like, man, you actually gonna do that? And she was like, anything for Sean. And I'm gonna tell you something. To go to that groom party, a man can groom a grown woman. Why you think a lot of women end up cheating? You groomed to cheat. Most times, because a guy will hit you in all of those weak spots that he know you missing. He started talking about, do you say this to you, girl? Or I'm going to listen to your problems and all this stuff. So he's saying all the right things. All of a sudden, you start becoming a woman he wants you to be. And all of a sudden, that could have happened to her. But, you know, I know Ryan Leslie just looking like, boy, what the hell? I'm glad I'm out of that. I'm glad, you know, that, you know, she chose him and I'm not there anymore. You know, I don't give a damn if she walked away with $20 million, bro. It's just the lasting effect on that, man. You know, you a husband and you hearing all of this. And you hearing about all these guys and all of this stuff and all this shit that doesn't happen. And it's just like, man, I see if this was like, they done this to her, she did this willingly. That's what messes with me. And, you know, and that's what's messing with those guys that's on the jury. This was willing. All the emotion is out of this. It's willing. You were a willing participant. Nobody forced you. You chose this. We see what's going to happen here, man. Like I said, you know, sometimes, you know, somebody don't say you victim blaming and victim shaming. I'm not victim shaming any damn body. You was complicit. You know, I usually stay on the fence sometimes, but man, it's hard to stay on the fence when you actually see the person, you know, like, come on. But to later, fam, thank you for watching. Peace out.